Welcome back to a little bit of cheese, your bite-sized Wisconsin sports podcast. I'm Cody Depius. That is Sam Douglas, back from Nashville, honky tonking it up out there. Sam, how was the trip? Now getting back early this morning. You said you got back.
Early this morning, long drive down to Nashville, but that's all right. Nashville was awesome. If you haven't been, check it out. It's a great time. Checked out Broadway, hit some distilleries, buzzed around on some scooters. Yeah, great time. Good music everywhere. And it
Yep.
was 55 and sunny during the day, Cody, and
Mm.
I do miss that. As I get back and it's about -10 here with extreme wind or extreme cold conditions. Seems like 2 days ago I was sitting on a balcony, 55 and sunny.
Yeah, I think even 12 degrees would feel pretty nice right now, as it is Monday, January 20th. It is -4. I don't even want to think about what the wind chill is. I'm going to be honest. I have not left the house yet today. I think I'm going to have to in a little bit here. But yeah, it's pretty cold out there. This is that middle to end of January freeze that we usually get up here in Wisconsin. But we got to stay inside and watch a lot of football yesterday and over the course of the weekend, and some interesting results. According to my predictions that I had last Friday, I only know half of football that I'm supposed to. The final results: Kansas City over Houston, Washington over Detroit, Philadelphia over LA, and Buffalo over Baltimore. We'll start it up at the top. Kansas City over Houston. This game is probably a lot closer than people thought it was going to be a couple of weeks ago, and Houston was not looking like they were going to be able to compete in the playoffs. They were within two scores, but Kansas City ultimately going out there getting that win. Of course, there are some questionable officiating calls that people are going to talk about, but I think we all understand here that Kansas City was the overall team, overall better team.
That they were, they are, they have been. Hey, this season was a success for Houston. They had a lot of injuries throughout the year. They lost their number two target. Tank Dell went down again. But Nico Collins is absolutely him. He made some awesome plays. I was watching this with family. My dad, he's a little older head. He says, "Is this Nico Collins guy? Is he legit?" He makes a beautiful catch on the sidelines. Nico Collins is absolutely here. And hey, this is a win for the Texans team for the season. You know, they're going to look at this. They went toe to toe with Kansas City. They saw what it's all about. They're still young. I feel like they're going to get another couple cracks at Kansas City over the next couple of years in the playoffs. But this weekend, this is Kansas City's show, and they're here to host another game at Arrowhead for the seventh straight year.
Yeah, that's really hard to comprehend. Like, I was trying to explain this to Bree. Anybody who does not follow the NFL, it's kind of hard to understand what's going on here with Kansas City. But
Mhm.
seven straight conference championships is absolutely bananas. That's crazy, bonkers. You haven't seen it. Patrick Mahomes already has three Super Bowl rings, right? Yeah, it's already three. He's looking for a three-peat, which you go back 15 years ago, the quarterback with the most Super Bowls over the Super Bowl era was either Joe Montana. Actually, and this is before Brady even won his fourth. So it was Joe Montana with four Super Bowl rings. So Patrick Mahomes is already considered one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time by Super Bowl history and playoff history. Andy Reid, the same conversation there. And I understand where all the Chiefs hate comes from, and it's just the fact that they are the villain and they continue to win. But you do have to understand how good you have to even be in the situation for an official to help you like they're always there ready to win. They're always in that position. They play good enough football to do it, and they're just smart. They might not be more talented, but they're just a smarter football team. They just play more complete football, and they're there going to the AFC Championship game once again. That's something you're not going to see. This is a generational run here for Kansas City. It is a dynasty. Absolutely.
Coming into this season, they lost their wide receiver one, wide receiver two, and running back one. Pacheco went down, Rasheed Rice went down, and Hollywood Brown, who they thought was going to be their guy, also went down. And they proceeded to go 15 and 1, dominated the season, 16 and 1, dominated the season. And here they are hosting their seventh straight AFC championship game. Andy Reid hit 300 wins as a coach. Belichick is at like 330 something. Are we 3, 4 years away from the greatest coach of all time having a little adjustment?
I think you're already kind of having that conversation, considering how much Andy's been a part as like even assistant coaching as well, because he was there in Green Bay. He was there, I think he made
Yeah.
one with Philadelphia. And this
Mhm.
Kansas City franchise was not in a great spot when he took over. And ever since then, like this team was making the playoffs with Alex Smith at quarterback. Do
Yeah.
you guys remember? Like they were a good football team when Patrick Mahomes was drafted, really. And then he stepped in and they had all the pieces there ready for him. And here we are, 7 straight AFC championships. But yeah, I think Andy Reid is definitely going to be in that conversation. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer if he retired tomorrow. And I think there's more Super Bowls there. And I hate to say it because I don't like watching it, but there's just what's Patrick? 28 years old, 29 years old. Like we might not
Not
have
30
even
yet.
seen, we might not have seen his best yet, and we get to witness it. So you have to be thankful for that. But boy, it's annoying. The way that he plays the game, like there are some plays like the late sliding. I hate. I mean, he's taking advantage of the rules that are already put in place in favor of the offense. So yeah, you can call that smart. I call it really cheap, like the slowing down as you're going out of bounds so someone does push you in the back and then you
Mhm.
flail out like they just came and hit you out of nowhere. That's ridiculous. I really wish that they'd stop doing that because then you could feel a little bit more comfortable with what's going on. But they're they're hunting for penalties. And at this point, it's ridiculous the kind of season that they've had, the calls that they've had in the Super Bowl. Like I go back and I watch like the phantom pass interferences that were called. Like there's just some funky stuff that's going around this, and this is why I'm a baseball guy, because baseball is black and white. Baseball, it's yeah, you know if the call's right or wrong. But when things get gray in football, like it can change an entire NFL season. Like your Super Bowl champion can be one flag that you still argue about to this day. Like even Tom Brady's first Super Bowl. I was reading up on the tuck rule yesterday. Like just these silly calls, one call can really do it. And it can for baseball too. But I feel like the umpiring does not come into effect near as much in baseball as the officiating does in football. Like
We saw it
that's
with
just
the
where I stand with it.
with the Packers Eagles. I mean, if we get the call, if we get a helmet to helmet on that first drive, momentum is everything. That might change our season right there.
Yeah, and the NFL actually since has fined Orrin Burks
Yeah,
nine thousand
so
dollars for a helmet to helmet hit.
unbelievable.
I it makes your blood boil. Like it is just how do you watch the replay of that, and then you go back. I don't know if you can call a flag after a replay if that's not what you're replaying, but if
Mm.
that's literally why he fumbled, I don't know. It's just ridiculous. They got to figure something out because that cannot happen in a wild card round to open up a game. That is just it's ridiculous. And I'm not saying that that's the reason that Green Bay lost, but boy, it set the tone for that game because it felt like Green Bay was looking to go and get momentum right away and start to climb that mountain. But then you take the ball away right away. Kansas City, well, not Kansas City, Philadelphia scores on 3 plays. And then it felt like the game was over, like 50 seconds into the game. Like, and you can't allow that to happen, NFL. So I don't want to be the guy that's just always complaining about the officiating, but it's just funny stuff. And you got to wonder what's going on. And people talk about, oh, the covering where
Nine and
Kansas
a
City
half point
scored
spread.
at yeah, like there's I don't know, conspiracies. Don't get me wrong. I love a good conspiracy theory, but I mean that like a spread is put there because the spread is like there's research that goes into it. Like yeah, Kansas City 9 points, yeah, right around there. Like that's kind of the thought process that goes into it. People that are way smarter than both you and I combined are going and making those lines. And yes, there's money involved. I don't know. It's all entertainment. We are all stupid enough to come back and watch it next week anyway. So maybe we're the idiots and we're at fault for all this anyway. So the biggest story, and I think this will be quite the conversation for us, is the Detroit Lions game, as both you and I have our Zoom names regarding this game. But the Lions first round exits, baby. Detroit Lions, what happened? That is my Zoom name, and you are J. Wynn Daniels. I was driving across the state during the first 2.5 quarters of this game, and then I was bartending for the rest of it. So I've seen bits and pieces and highlights. But Detroit really, Jared Goff, I think, is the biggest question mark for this game. Just did not play like a guy who belonged to play in the Super Bowl. And that's where I put it. Dan Campbell was up at the press conference crying after this game. I want your overall takes on all of this. What are Detroit fans thinking and feeling on this really chilly Monday?
It takes a lot of gusto to go to the Super Bowl and then trade your quarterback. Sean McVay saw that Jared Goff was not, is not, in all due respect, because Goff had an incredible season, set some awesome numbers, completion percentage through the roof. But he knew that Jared Goff is not the guy you're tying a franchise to and saying, carry us to a Super Bowl. Sean McVay saw that years ago. That's why he traded for Matt Stafford. It felt like a one-to-one trade. I think McVay knew it was not a one-to-one trade. Jared Goff is prone to making these mistakes. It's the Darnold effect. Things get heating up and water always finds its level, so they say. And Sam Darnold absolutely did. And Jameson Williams quarterbacking found his level as well. It feels like the aggression of Dan Campbell did come back to bite the Lions when you're down two scores and you need a good drive. You let your quarterback throw the ball. That being
That,
said,
yeah.
I chose a Jaden Daniels approach to this game. I'm such a fan of this kid, Cody. He's
Mm-hmm.
going to be dominating this league for a while. If he can stay healthy, if he can put on a couple pounds of weight, his heart rate never goes over 50. I mean, this kid is calm, cool, collected. You might call it luck that the Commanders have won all these nail-biting games this year.
No.
But there's something to be said about showing up in the clutch time. And he's a rookie. He was a second overall pick. And Jaden Daniels is here to stay. I'm a fan of this kid. I want to see what he does in this league. And I tell you what, this is a divisional game, Philly and Washington here. It's anybody's ball game. Philly's going to be the favorite. I might put $2 in a Mountain Dew on Washington though.
I like the thought process there and the way that everybody is talking about Jaden Daniels. How the heck is he a rookie? Like, I have
Yeah.
not seen a quarterback step into this league and be so refined right away. And they talk about it so well. He is at his best in the final 2 minutes of the football game. And he plays a pretty darn good first 95% of the game, too. But those final 2 minutes, Jaden Daniels is there. He's ice cold. It's incredible to watch this kid play, what he can do with his legs, with his arms. He's just a smart football player. Like when Lamar Jackson came in, what he did was really great, but it took a couple of years for him to really find what he could do with his arm. It did. And when he did, boy, he had the fourth greatest passer rating season of all time this year, and he really found it. But what Daniels can do with the legs and the arm right away, and people wrote off Washington so bad this year. I remember looking at comments of people saying, why would they go out and get an Austin Eckler? This is an old running back. He's not going to be effective. This team's terrible. You're just wasting money. They're in the NFC Championship game. Washington was so bad last year. And of course, when Dan Snyder leaves, everything just turns around. And you got to love stuff like that. But it's really hard not to root for the Washington Commanders. This is a really fun football team. Jaden Daniels, this is next level talent. This is what the Chicago Bears thought that they were picking with
Mhm.
Williams right away. And I'm not saying Williams isn't that, and that Williams is an absolute bust right away, because I think he's going to be a very good quarterback. But they thought that they were drafting this kid that was refined and going to be able to transcend the league immediately. No, he was picked right behind. That was Jaden Daniels. He's a dog. He's here to stay for a long time. You just hope he stays healthy. But he's smart the way that he plays with it. He knows when to go down. He doesn't take the super big shots. I did see him set a block off the edge this weekend too, which
Gotta love
I
it.
mean, I kind of love. Like, don't get hurt, absolutely, but kind of love that. Hard not to root for this kid, but Detroit, man, 15 wins, first round exits. Yes, you had all the injuries. I don't like those excuses because every single team deals with injuries. Yes, Detroit was really, really battered on this defense. But if the offense plays well and the guys that were healthy played well, I don't think we have this same conversation. That pick six changes the entire complexion of the game. Your offense just was not there the way they had been all season. They were the reason that they lost. I don't think you put it on the injuries. No, the defense did not help anything. They were a sieve. Everything could just go right through them. But the talent's there. I think this is a Super Bowl team if they played to their full capability, and it showed that there were some problems on offense that are going to keep them from a Super Bowl.
When you have a guy like Jahmyr Gibbs for the Lions, yeah, their defense is bad. Would they let up 45 points, something gnarly like that?
Less than that because there was the pick six and other turnovers as well. Like,
When
but
you have a running game that you do, you shouldn't let that many points in. You should be dominating the possession. That's what you see
mhm.
these winning teams do. That's what you saw the Patriots do. That's what you see the Chiefs doing. That's why the Eagles are winning games handily because they can dominate the possession. You can have a 9 minute drive. You don't need to be run. I loved the reverse that Teddy Bridgewater stepped in and
Yeah.
ran. That was awesome. You don't need to be doing that though. If you have a good offensive line, if you know your defense is battered, if you know you have a quarterback who can just throw checkdowns, and you have Jahmyr Gibbs who is an absolute dog, there shouldn't be that many possessions in the game. And that's why a little bit of this is on Dan Campbell. I don't know if it was his aggression. I don't know if it was Ben Johnson play calling alone, but this should if the Lions wanted to win this game, knowing that their defense was vulnerable, they should have kept everything under 25 points.
Yeah, I think so as well. And I don't know, the Jaden Williams, well, no, Jamison Williams play, excuse me. That one I was sitting up and looking at Dan, like kind of just shaking his head when he was on TV screen. I was saying, you continued to do this. Like, yes, it
Mhm.
was fun. We love to watch it in the regular season, but there is crunch time. And when you're down two scores, that's not time to have fun. That's time to go play football, like good, hard nosed football, like stuff with a pulling guard. You go to the outside, just something normal, not having your wide receiver who, I don't know, the way that we've seen him talk in interviews, he might not be a guy that's an elusive pocket passer and can really read a defense. I'll put it that way. A dude who has also been caught like betting and whatnot. Maybe the decision making by a Jamison Williams isn't what you want with the ball in his hands, looking to throw when you're down by two scores. I'll go out there and I'll say that. I'll make that take. I'll drop it. And really, I don't think it's hot. I think it's I think it's as cold, honestly, as it is outside. The way that I can look at it, but just questionable things, the timeout decisions. I don't know. Detroit just wasn't there. And the NFC North, the greatest division in NFL history by wins, nobody could get a win in the playoffs. And I don't know what that means for Green Bay, but I think everyone played their best football in the regular season, is what it looked like. And that's not what matters. I think you saw two quarterbacks who had good regular seasons, but we all kind of knew deep down that they're not Super Bowl quarterbacks, really. Like Jared Goff, yes, he's been to a Super Bowl, but they put up 3 points in that Super Bowl. Like there's a Sam Darnold and a Jared Goff. And I think the big question here for Green Bay and what your takeaway can be from this is Jordan Love better than those guys? Do you trust a Jordan Love more than you trust a Jared Goff and a Sam Darnold? And right now the answer might be no. And that's okay because there's still some time for Jordan Love. But that's really the big question. And I think your biggest takeaway that you have to look at all this. And yes, you have Love locked up for the next 3 years. You sign him to a big contract. You're going to eat that contract. You made that decision. You have to trust your kid. But down the road, can Jordan Love do it? And I think that's the biggest question that Green Bay is asking after watching this first round of games.
Gotta be. Gotta be. Hey, the clutch time quarterbacks are showing up. I think it's important that you can do everything in the regular season, but it's important to take those steps. Just get better week and week and week and get better and keep building blocks. It felt like the Lions started the season so hot. They might have peaked too early on this season. And
Yeah.
the injuries are relevant. What would help against the Jaden Daniels? Probably an Aiden Hutchinson. I don't know. It might have helped the cause a little bit. So just like the Chiefs aren't going anywhere, I don't think the Lions are going anywhere. They're going to be dominant in the NFC for the next 2, 3 years while they have this young talent, while Jameer is still hot, while Amon-Ra is, while they have all their pieces. Lions aren't going anywhere.
I do love to watch them lose, though, the way that they
Oh
act
yeah.
with all the, I don't know, the Green Bay sucks sweatshirts and kind of what they all talk about. And Amon-Ra St. Brown, like talking about Diami Brown on the other sideline, saying, yeah, I know that guy was drafted ahead of me. Like, we're just talking about the talent and whatnot. I don't know. He likes to run his mouth, and some guys do. But I think until you go out there and you're getting the job done and going and actually winning things, I don't know how much you can sit there and talk. That's kind of the way that I look at those things, but that was a very they were looking to be a villain, and I don't know how much you can be a villain when you haven't won anything yet, really. Like that you gotta
Nailed
you
it.
gotta give yourself villain status to be able to go out and talk like that. And Detroit, I don't think they've had the credentials to be able to do that quite yet. Uh Another game, Philly over LA. This was a really good football game. Kind of what we all expected. Saquon Barkley had himself a day, but LA was right there, just not able to hold on to the ball at the end of the game. The offensive line faltering against Philly. I think
Mhm.
the Eagles just proved that that was their day in the snow, and with those conditions, they deserve to go to an NFC Championship game.
That's what it felt like it came down to me. When the Rams needed their offenses when it was 20-mile-an-hour winds in the snowstorm. And when the Eagles needed their offense, they needed their big boys up front and Saquon Barkley to make a move. And that's kind of what it came down to. It was a tough day outside in Philadelphia that a LA Rams team was veterans and played well in, but it came down to a throw over the middle, trying to find Puka, and you couldn't connect. And I bet Stafford and Puka make that throw and catch 20 times out of 20. So Saquon is absolutely him. God, he's
Mm-hmm.
fast. He's good. He's bouncing off people. It's 200 yards. It's not empty stats in the regular season. Saquon is absolutely about it. And I'm a big fan. I like that he came out and him and Derrick Henry have been open about the running back group chat that happened in the offseason. And a lot of the all-star running backs got together, made a group chat, said, how can we change perspective on how important we are to our teams? And so seeing him and Derrick Henry and Josh Jacobs not only have the seasons, but be as impactful players as they are, seeing where their old teams are and where their new teams are, I think that's awesome for the running back position. It's one of the more important positions in sports. You can't treat it like a body cycling through. We've seen the difference between someone that's good like Aaron Jones and someone that's great like Josh Jacobs. And so I like what he's doing for the running back position. I will be rooting for Jaden Daniels in the NFC Championship game.
I think everybody will be, except for Philly Eagles fans. Like that, no, nobody. The way that Philly's been handling themselves and all the videos online of their fan base and whatnot. And I'm not speaking against like Hurts or Saquon or any of those guys. It's just like the Philly fan base. That's a really tough bandwagon to hop onto, even just for a playoff. Yeah, I'll bet on these guys. Philly's going to be a favorite, but boy, I would love to watch Washington go to a Super Bowl. That would be cool. That would be the story that I think everybody goes out there and they love. I love your conversation on the running back as well. That is football. The running back is football. The offensive line opening up a hole for a running back, a pulling guard, an extra tight end. That is football. That's what we love to watch. And Saquon, I don't think he'd be in the top 30 of paid wide receivers.
Yeah.
Start paying your guys. I don't know what it takes, but like the value that a Josh Jacobs brings to the Green Bay Packers, the value that Derrick Henry brings, the value of Saquon Barkley brings. You're seeing all of it this year. It completely changes an offense. It opens up your passing game. When you have another weapon that you can count on for 25 carries, that can open so many things up with play action. That opens up your passing game. So I think that those guys got to start getting paid more, and you're starting to see the value really come out here. And I think what helps with that is to start to see these guys play into 31, 32, 33 years old and still playing at a high level. I think that's what changes it. And I think it's going to take a couple of NFL teams to give guys going into their 30s more chances because the NFL hasn't. I like how Aaron Jones is still getting his chance. But usually when running back hits 30, Dalvin Cook, where'd he go? Like that's what has been normal in the NFL. Once you start to see that, those guys will get bigger and longer checks. The final game, I think overall the best game, probably the most heartbreaking game, like one where you saw it at the end, and Baltimore had a chance to go and tie Buffalo at the end of the game. And all it would have taken for that good opportunity would have been a Mark Andrews 2-point conversion catch. He had it right in the breadbasket, but it popped out and he dropped it. Yes, Josh Allen would have had a minute and 33 seconds to work with. He might have went down and drove, but I would rather see Josh Allen go and do that and win that way than watching Buffalo essentially clinch it off of a Mark Andrews drop 2-point conversion. Lamar Jackson had one really stupid interception, but Baltimore's offense, 3 turnovers overall. Buffalo took care of the ball. They played good, clean football, and that's the reason the Bills are going to the AFC Championship game again.
That's the levels of the teams out here. Buffalo takes care of the ball. Baltimore was more talented. They had more Pro Bowls. Lamar put up better numbers. Lamar's a better runner than Josh. They have all the wing dinks and the defensive studs, and Buffalo just got busy gutting their team over the last offseason. But if you're a better team, you'll take care of the ball, and that was absolutely the difference. And you know what? I'll also go out and say it. You give Josh Allen a minute and a half to go win a playoff game, the guy's going to put some points on the board. Just like Lamar did, because that's what greatness does. Lamar had one drive to go get some points on the board, and dang it, he did it. This is not an indictment on Lamar. If anything, the bad throw and the fumble, he needs to learn from. He had his moment, and that's why they are knocking on the door of the AFC Championship game and not going toe-to-toe with Kansas City, because there is fine margins when you get into these games. Buffalo just has. Mark Andrews, I think the last time he lost a fumble was 2019. You got to feel good about finding him. He had to fumble the possession before he got it punched out. It was an awesome punch, but you got to hold on to the ball. This is one of the more sured hands tight ends, one of the better tight ends in NFL, I don't know, history. The guy puts up incredible numbers year after year. He's very sure hands, and you found him in the breadbasket to tie the game with a minute and a half left. I don't think there's anything else you can ask for as a Ravens fan. You can't draw it up better than that.
Yeah, it stunk. I don't know if you saw, but there was actually a tweet that 6 minutes before Andrews dropped it, the one Baltimore fan predicted it exactly. It said Baltimore is going to go down and score this touchdown, and then Mark Andrews is going to drop a 2-point conversion.
No.
Yes, someone had that down to a T, and I don't know. Andrews had a very up and down season, but that is the guy you go to in that situation, and it just sucks. My heart hurt for Ravens fans in that point because I wanted at least for them to get that 2-point conversion and then see if Allen can go and get those points at the minute 30. And if not, you duke it out in overtime. That was just as a neutral, unbiased fan. I did also pick Baltimore to win the Super Bowl. I wanted to see more football, and we had that robbed of us because just a simple mental mistake. No, a physical mistake is what it was. Not a mental mistake, a physical mistake on Mark Andrews. But really, overall, great weekend of football. You got some great games coming up next week. Kansas City taking on those Bills. We'll see if Allen can climb that mountain. I'd love to see that as well. Then Washington playing Philly. Got a great championship weekend set up for us. Milwaukee Bucks, 2 big wins this week over the Toronto Raptors and over the Philly 76ers. In the Philly game, Dame with 25 points became the 38th player in NBA history to score 22,000. Just continues to climb those milestones, does Damian Lillard. The Bucks are now 24-17, fourth in the East. They are 2 games back of third place, and that is the New York Knicks. One conversation that Sam asked me about and he wanted to have, we'll have pretty quickly here, but Jimmy Butler in Milwaukee, I know there's a lot of conversation surrounding it. I'm going to say no to this. I think Jimmy's another old player, and he's similar to a lot of the other guys on this roster. We saw how hard it was to get Dame implemented into this offense last year. As it's still working into this year. I don't think you need another mouth to feed that is going into his 30s and has already seen his best basketball.
Best basketball has definitely been seen by Jimmy Butler, and that is why the Bucks might be interested here. It seems like there's a lot more interest from the Bucks than you and I would care for there to be.
Hmm.
I'm also not a fan of this move whatsoever, but they are one of the few teams that are interested, that Jimmy is interested in as well. And we know John Horst does like to make some big time moves. I don't see it happening personally. But that being said, Jimmy is like that, and he will turn it up in a playoff series. And Giannis has seen that. Giannis has been on the other side of the court when Jimmy
Yes.
flips a switch. And I can see Giannis, the competitor, saying, screw it. I want him on my team. I could see that being a little bit of a conversation. We would have to give up Chris, and that's why I'm not a fan of it. Because if you take this in a vacuum, here's my take on the Jimmy Butler situation. We would have to give Chris and extras to get Jimmy, of course. I would rather have Chris Middleton by himself than Jimmy Butler because Chris fills a role. We've talked about this a couple times with the Bucks, how Bobby, we need somebody to fill a role rather than be everything that Bobby Portis is. That's what we need out of Chris Middleton. We need an ISO scorer who can just level the ship once in a while, someone who's going to be smart, who knows the system, who has team chemistry. We have our guys. Giannis and Dame can take care of us offensively. We need chemistry. We need this team building, and that's why we had struggles in the first part of the season. And after a little bit of time, turns out we're title contenders. I'm not a fan of the Jimmy Butler trade. I'm not a fan of how close, how much conversation there is coming from the Bucks organization about it.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. I don't. I mean, the way that Jimmy has been able to turn it up in the playoffs, he's looked like an NBA legend at times when it gets to the end of the playoffs. He really has. I don't know if he's got that left in the tank, and I don't want to see another. I don't want to see a guy with locker room issues come into this Bucks locker room. I don't think that that helps as well. A dude that is essentially giving up on his Heat team. I don't. There's not a lot of positive vibes there, and maybe a change of scenery would change it, but Jimmy's had problems in multiple places in multiple franchises now. I don't think it would be an overall plus for the Bucks to go out there and get him. And that's even without having no trade capital. And I don't know what they would do and what pieces they would try to move. So I think overall it would be a negative for the Bucks to go out and get a Jimmy Butler. Wisconsin taking down USC 84-69. This is Greg Gard's best start through 18 games of a season. I'm going to let that take us into our cheese grater as Sam coming right back into the action here. So they are 15-3 through 18 games. How secure is Greg Gard? My first question of the cheese grater.
Greg Gard's in a good spot right now. I think this team wasn't really expected to be a year-long top 25 team, and they're playing really well. He's getting the most out of his guys. I will say the win against Ohio State was a little bit concerning. They did everything they could to give it away. They were up 17, and it ended up coming down to a free throw contest. But that being said, shout out Greg Gard. The Badgers are the number one free throw shooting team in the country.
Mm-hmm.
That's on coaching. So shout out my boy. He's got his job locked up. Hey, Cody, I wasn't able to be with you for the Bob Uecker episode. Definitely poured a few out for him. What's your favorite sports call you've ever heard live?
The favorite call I heard live, and this one pretty much got me into sports and sports fandom the way that I am now. It was the Niger Morgan walk-off single in the National League Division Series in 2011. Gomez rounding third, and the Brewers into the National League Championship Series. Yeah, that's the one. I've heard a lot of great euchre calls, of course. I love hearing that Bob Euchre's final home run call was Jackson Churrio's grand
Yeah.
slam against St. Louis. That's just the baseball gods just giving us another gift there, watching a 90-year-old Bob Uecker call a 20-year-old grand slam. But I will let that lead into my next one. What is your favorite Bob Uecker story? Anything. However, what your connection to Bob Uecker was, if you just got a little tidbit you'd like to share with the people.
I think it's special that he never had a contract with the Brewers. That's something I learned young and something that my dad has always been a fan of and always mentioned. You know, he's not volunteering, but he kind of is. You know, he just loves ball.
Hmm.
And that was emulated in every aspect of what he did. The way he talked, the way he carried himself, you know, when he's calling a game, everything. He just loved ball. When he was a player, the self-deprecating humor, like he stuck around teams not because he was great, but because the guy loved ball, and that's what you needed around. And I think that's just a beautiful thing.
Really a
Uh
glue guy that just made teams
yeah.
better because of his personality, like in every sense. A dude who is not helping all that much on the field when you look at his number. I mean, a really good defensive catcher, by what it sounded like. A guy doesn't play 6 years in baseball by hitting only 200, but his biggest value was his personality, and he let that carry him the rest of his career.
I love seeing everybody from all angles pour out love, like people
Yep.
from everywhere that you had no idea would have been touched by Bob Uecker.
Hmm.
You know, from comedians to all angles of sports to all angles of politics to music, everybody has a little
Yep.
bit of Bob Uecker.
True.
Trivia for you: he's the Packers Super Bowl linebacking core.
Nick Barnett, Frank Zombo. Clay Matthews is in there. Who's the other edge? I can't remember. This is before Eric Walden.
Nick Barnett
Um,
was injured this year. He played 4 games.
you're saying Packers Super Bowl linebacking
Yeah,
core.
yeah.
Uh, oh boy. I mean, I know Frank Zombo came up big at the end of it. I know he played a lot in that Super Bowl. I'll say
Sure
that.
did.
And you had Matthews out on the edge. I can't remember the other edge rusher. I'll just need you to give it to me.
AJ Hawk was in there.
Yes, Hawks. Sorry, that's a stupid miss.
And the last one, Desmond Bishop.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I got Bishop and Barnett. They're very similar players in both last names starting with a B, I think. Let me miss that. But yeah, that Green Bay defense, they have it that Super Bowl plays on a bar 24/7 down here in La Crosse. Shooters Bar in La Crosse will always play that 2010 Super Bowl, and I just love watching that defense because you had superstars at every single level. And Green Bay's defense there, I think they can be on their way there, but they're still light years away from what we saw with that Green Bay defense. And it was kind of crazy because then the next year they were actually the worst defense in the NFL. They went from number 2 to number 32 in a single year. And I think losing Nick Collins is a big reason for that. But we'll end the show here with our Super Bowl prediction headline for next week. I got a Philly KC Super Bowl repeat on the way after a weekend filled with questionable officiating because I feel like we're just leading up to some call that we're going to talk about for the rest of football history.
Kansas City heavy favorites to win the third in a row. I think they're going to see Washington. I think they're going to sweep the floor with Washington. And I think this is one big Kansas City parade for the next 3 weeks, Cody.
I mean, nobody wants to see that, but the way that it's looking, yeah, I just don't like the whole ref thing. I don't like the narrative. I just
Yeah.
it's just not the way that I like sports. I like sports because one team dominates the other, and Kansas City has not been dominating anything so far this year. They have not been overpowering in any sense the way that I watch football games. Well, that'll do it for us today. We'll be back on Friday to prep you a little bit more for championship weekend here. We'll talk about some more Badgers, some more Bucks. But I'm Cody Depius. That is Sam Douglas. I want to thank you for being here. This has been another edition of A Little Bit of Cheese, your bite-sized Wisconsin sports podcast.